Right. All right. Aloha, e como mai to all watching today, and to dear Becky Gardner, amazing human being, HIAMFT, HPA, and NASW Hawaii chapter lobbyist, um, mom and daughter of a psychiatrist, and just so many cool things in your background. Um, Mahalo for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. And more importantly, I'm bringing the Valentines in today. Happy
I was gonna
Valentine's
say,
Day today.
yeah.
I got like two red items. I got one of them on.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about wearing something that's a little bit more festive.
Well, you've been warned now.
I have been. I'm gonna go change after this.
Yeah, and get flowers for your honeys, all of you, and all the chocolate and all the rest of it.
Yeah, we have this amazing place here on Big Island. Shout out to a place called Cupcakes Boom. Uh,
Ooh.
they have phenomenal gourmet cupcakes, and so I bought our daughter, some cupcakes for Valentine's Day, and I got my wife a dozen chocolate covered strawberries.
Oh, yum.
Yeah, this place is amazing.
Oh, I gotta go get some later. Maybe it'll be on sale tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's my Christmas technique.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, wow.
Oh,
So it is I mean, we're really kind of in the thick of the legislative session now.
yeah. I'm really tired right now. I got some coffee and I'm hoping to get amped up by talking to you guys because actually last night I didn't get a chance when you live streamed it, but I saw your discussion with Danny Gardner, no relation, but I wouldn't be sad if we were, and Joelle, uh, and both trainees. They're
Yep, they're
doing
both
their
MFT students right now. They're
huh?
in graduate school. Yeah.
Okay, so they're in a master's program, an online master's program.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, because you guys were talking about North Central, and one of my best friends is getting her MFT there at North Central too. So I was like, wow, amazing convergence. And so I get to hear it from her, what she's experienced, and then I heard these guys, and then to hear, oh, I'm getting chills. To hear Joelle and Danny talk about how SB 2829, the associate licensing bill that Senator Ocasio had introduced, Big Island representative senator,
Right.
um, and to hear Danny and Joelle talk about the impact that it will have on their lives, their practice, their patients, their ability to serve. And I'm like, oh, we're doing it. We're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
The real world effect of that bill, if we can get that passed, will be tremendous,
Yeah.
for the better. For the better. There are so many people that I have worked with. I had mentioned in my testimony, a supervisee on the east side here, down in Pahoa, which has the highest concentration of Native Hawaiian residents. And she is Native Hawaiian, and she was trying to develop a program, a therapy program, a counseling program, totally in Olelo, Hawaii.
Oh,
And it
amazing.
was amazing.
Oh,
And the barriers we faced financially because we couldn't bill for her time
oh,
were tremendous. Um, and we had to shut it down.
oh.
Yeah.
And what an amazing vision,
Oh,
right? And
beautiful.
the the effectiveness I imagine is probably many times over having that cultural element. And in fact, I'm working on a bill with the Hawaii Psychological Association on requiring continuing ed credits in diversity, inclusion, cultural competence. And so I see really so many common threads with these bills. And they're not just bills. I mean, it's about real life impact. And, with the associate licensing bill, I can see very much so all of these people who are coming out and support all of these students, like new early career professionals. They're talking about how, like, man, if I didn't have to have that side gig, waiting tables or, like putting all this energy into this or that, and I could just focus on developing my practice and focus on the vulnerable target groups that I went into this for, and they can get right into it, especially when all the theory from school is fresh in their brain and they're hungry and they're eager and they're energized. So just to know that they are ready to go into those segments of our population where they know the need, maybe the reason they went to school for this. And so this would just clear the path for that. So I don't know, I really hope everyone who's watching, you can share this with someone who could get behind it and testify. Today, it's being heard different bill. But SB 2829, the associate licensing bill, passed the Health Committee on the Senate side, and now it's in the Commerce Consumer Protection Committee on the Senate side, and it hasn't been set for hearing, but now's a really good time to go make sure you have a capital account and sign up for a hearing notification on that bill. And there's lots of videos and stuff. Maybe I can come on again and we could do it right before it's set for hearing, and we could do it together. Just an idea.
Well, I'll definitely put a link to that registration site in the ad here later.
Yeah. And just to tell everyone out there, share your story. Like, what would it mean to you? What has it meant to you? What about the people you treat? Like, bring a dose of reality to these bills, because that's what the legislators, that's what's going to grab their attention, I think. And that's really what they should be paying attention to. So they're not going to do it unless we put it out there for them. So
yeah, because the stories that are often offered in opposition of some of these efforts are pretty extreme. Fears of fraud, fears of the public being hurt in some way if we have an associate level license. But those are few and far between. Those are extremes that rarely happen. The majority of what happens is that people get really high quality supervision and relevant clinical experience as a therapist before they're fully independently licensed to do basically whatever they want. It is the time to have people really being supervised, mentored, and being able to earn a living. Because we've talked about how the brain drain thing and how so many super talented clinicians, very therapeutic people, just in their presence, could either leave the field because they just can't afford to basically work for free or work for subpar wages for 2 years while they're also usually paying a supervisor. Or they go to another state, and then we lose a resident here in Hawaii.
Yeah. And, even if you aren't from maybe one of those marginalized groups where you don't see strong representation in the therapist's profession, even those who might be, more comfortable or inclined because they went to school here, they've been here for a while, it still doesn't make financial sense for them to stay. I understand how that is. I'm from upstate New York, and prices of houses there is like a parking lot here. So, or parking space here. So it's just, what am I doing? But I don't know. I want to offer like a consumer perspective a little bit too. I've used therapy. Family members, I'm a daughter of a psychiatrist. So, I think using therapy should be totally normalized. But as a patient, I would say, I would be really stoked to be seeing associate license that's getting like contemporaneous coaching. I feel like I would be getting 2 therapists in one. It'd be like super therapy. Sign me up for that.
That's her next tagline: associate level licensing, super therapy.
For therapy in half the time, decrease your waist size by anyways,
Yeah.
marketing, right? But yeah, I think there's just so many reasons on so many levels that we should see this happen. And there's another thing that you said that it got me thinking. It sort of gets to a lot of my philosophy on what I'm doing as a lobbyist is, you said that there's going to be arguments that the fraud is going to get out of control. There'll be shysters, you can't, how are you going to regulate? There's going to be these terrible things that happen because it's going to run amok. That's really effective at making things happen or making things not happen. I mean, we see that sort of political stance, we've seen it come on strong the last several years. Fear, right? Decisions and swaying people based on fear. But I don't want to play that. I think we should be focused on what these bills can do. Instead of like worrying what's the worst going to happen, we should be asking ourselves, what's the best that can happen? And then work backwards from there. What are the steps that we take to get to that place?
Yeah, well said. And I know one of the things that we've talked about to be the best in our field is to have strong supervision requirements, have things laws or regulations in place that would give us some way of monitoring if anyone's being exploited in that associate level licensing process. If somebody's trying to give supervision, half an hour a week when they should be doing more, if they're just, giving it superfluous attention, right? We want to be able to protect the associate level licensee. We want to be able to protect our clients, of course. And the best way to do that is actually to have this associate level license so we can start building that infrastructure. I mean, we already have it because as clinicians, we have to go through the process of preparing for licensure, for fully independent licensure. The main thing that this would do is really codify that while creating a financial method for both the supervisee and the supervisor to be able to stay connected and earn a living, to keep the lights on, right?
And streamline it.
And streamline it. Yeah, we can
get
really
these people through the pipe much faster.
Oh my
and
God.
To work and healing people. I mean, why delay?
Yeah, there really is no valid reason that has any support in terms of research and in terms of any descriptive data that we've been able to collect. In fact, the other day when I was putting together revising that draft for today's hearing, the written testimony, I just went into a database, a university database, and just started looking around for any research that's been done on telehealth and audio only telehealth. And there's a ton of research that's been done on this stuff.
Yeah, right. And why? So
Because,
it sits in digits in a database,
right,
and then what? And then does anything happen?
if we're not following the
Yeah.
data, then why do the research in the first place?
Yeah. Right. So this is that bridge, is turning the research, turning the knowledge into policy. And so, you guys are doing your work over here, and then the legislators are doing their work over there, and they're talking about this, but they don't really know what's going on here. And you could discovered some things, but there's like a gap in communication or understanding, or, that the process is so obscure, or it's too fast, or manipulated by, powerful people seeking influence, whatever it is. We need to lessen that gap and really improve how we communicate and translating what what you found, what you see, what you've concluded into true policy that has real impact.
My doctoral thesis title was Bridging the Practice Research Gap in Culturally Diverse Communities.
There you go. Any legislators read it?
Highly doubt it. But this is part of it. The data is telling us something here.
Yeah.
And for sure, what it's telling us is that given our geographic challenges, the uniqueness of our geographic layout, and given the diversity in our population, and given how many folks live in rural communities, and the uneven distribution of uh, finances throughout all these communities where we have really impoverished communities, things like audio only telehealth, associate level licensing, these things would disproportionately negatively affect rural, elderly, low income populations. For example, with audio only telehealth, if they
Yeah.
weren't available, and they would positively affect those same populations and more if they are available.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because we spent a lot of time talking about the associate licensing bill, SB 2645. I'm sorry, 2829. But the audio only telehealth bill is on my mind right now because there's a hearing today at 1:15 is SB 2645. Here. See, I made a little sign.
Oh,
We love this bill.
love this bill. This is the audio only carve out.
Audio only. And it's on today, February 14th. And there was research that just came out from Department of Health Human Services, federal agency, Office of Planning and Evaluation branch of it or something. And they just came out with a fact sheet, which looked at the data from during the pandemic. Telehealth had expanded quite a bit, like 300%, just ballooned during the pandemic. And there were all these emergency proclamations that said, okay, you can use the telephone and let it qualify as a telehealth type service. So it gets the insurance reimbursement because we need to keep everyone away from each other, social distance. So they made this accommodation through emergency proclamation, temporary, saying telephone is telehealth. It's fine. But that rule went away because now we're opening up. But there's been proposals. In fact, last year was a proposal. And again, there's a proposal to say, wait, let's keep that. That works out really well. And this data that came out from DHHS just a couple of weeks ago, they looked back at the pandemic period, and they determined that there are strong disparities between utilization. I know you like that word, John, and I think it's something that we should be parroting a lot. Utilization of services via video and phone. And they found that it skews way more towards, those who don't like video or limited English proficient, different ethnic groups, lower socioeconomic groups, elderly, they don't like using video. There's so many marginalized groups that are going to get further marginalized if you say, sorry, you got to use your $1,000 iPhone to connect to your doctor.
Yeah. It's kind of, yeah. I mean, that data is so clear. When I saw
Yeah.
that, I was really surprised to just say,
Yeah.
wow, it's real. There are the numbers.
Yeah. And to take it back to reality, like we were talking, like you guys are out there, you're in these places,
Yeah.
know.
I'm telling you, it's, so that Supervisio is talking about down in
Mhm.
Pahoa.
Mhm.
So we would talk about how she wanted to have telehealth via video and audio,
Yeah.
or she wanted to have people come into her office, neither of which were very feasible, oftentimes because one, these people who live down there sometimes didn't have vehicles that were readily available, and they live pretty far out to rural community, right? So it's quite a bit of a drive to get to her office. So coming into office was out. The audio video thing, one, the broadband connection is very spotty out there,
Mhm.
or two, they just didn't have really the tech. They didn't have very good computers, or three, the person running it just wasn't very tech savvy and wasn't really comfortable figuring that out.
Mhm.
So we were left with telephone. That
Mhm.
was it. And it happened repeatedly where her best bet, short of driving down there herself, by the way, because that would be a fourth option,
And not
but
always,
and not always.
and not
And
during a pandemic.
how
Yeah.
sustainable is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Particularly if you're doing this on a grant basis, it's really
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah.
So it's a real challenge to a lot of people in
Yeah.
Hawaii.
It's a challenge, and it's so simple, right? It's like
It's like
it's an
not
old
everybody can
school,
have champagne, but hey, everybody should have access to water.
right? Yeah, yeah, that's it. I was like, okay, let's be real for a second. It is so bouge, right?
So boosh.
You're like, oh, connection. I got the Zoom link. I'll put it on my calendar. Like, no, not everyone operates that way. And, and even if you do, if you're in distress, you just don't want to be messing around with that stuff. If you need to pick up the phone, you should be able to pick up the phone.
Right. So the biggest concern that I've heard so far, meeting with legislators, is that there'll be fraud. That somehow people won't really do the work. I think one of the examples given to us was somebody doing workman comp evaluations. Would just bill for a ton of workman comp things that they maybe only put a couple of minutes into. Just calling people up and then billing the insurance company for tons of money.
Mm-hmm.
And my response to that is, we're talking about mental and behavioral health care here.
Yeah.
We're talking about what is talk therapy. And now there are, of course, other ways of doing that kind of work. But for our purposes here, we as clinicians are charged and sanctioned socially by the state to be qualified to discern who would talk therapy be appropriate for and who would it not be appropriate for. That's sort of level one. Let's screen those people. And then two, even if there was some rogue doctor out there or therapist only calling their clients for a few minutes and then charging for a full session, one, they wouldn't have clients for very long because the clients that I meet with really want to meet with me.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but most of them, I'd say they're really looking forward to that time.
Not like a dentist.
No. So
Yeah.
while we want to have parity with medical providers, we also have to be able to understand what are some of the differences.
Yeah.
And that's a huge difference, is that people are seeking that connection with a therapist because it helps them feel better.
Yeah. And that's what, I hope legislators will understand, is that we need to defer to the clinical expertise of the practitioner, not to insurance companies' bottom line and their concern for fraud, or generalized notions of what it takes to heal from an emotional injury. That's up to you guys to decide, and that's why you're educated, that's why you're licensed, that's why you're credentialed. We can relax, you got this. So to infuse this fear thing again, like, and why? What's that about?
Yeah.
So I'm always
Yeah.
asking, what's that about?
What's that about?
And like, let's put out what it should be about. What
Yes.
should this be about?
It should be
This should
about
be about,
increasing access and utilization of mental health care
yeah,
that everyone deserves to have if they
yeah.
want it.
Access and utilization. And that's what these two proposals do. The associate license bill, SB 2829, helps to provide a whole bunch of access, because there's going to be so many more practitioners out there who can take patients. And then the audio only proposal will allow it will meet the patients where they are and help improve utilization, because we don't need to have a chilling effect on that. That doesn't serve anybody. If they're afraid to come to the office, they got a social phobia, that it's hard to get on a bus, they've got a broken limb, whatever it is, like that's an arbitrary reason to didn't, for a barrier.
Yeah.
When everything can be, so we don't want a chilling, we want them to talk to their therapist.
Yeah. That's such a good point about the deferring to the mental health providers' judgments. When I did some volunteer work for the Red Cross during the 2018 eruption, I heard a phrase that has really stuck with me, which was "learn to stay in your lane."
Yeah.
And I took that to heart. So this is a good opportunity for us to stay in our lane as professionals. You're right. We've been trained. We've gone through the post-degree experience. We've gotten the license to be able to handle this. We got this. We have ways of making sure that we're not doing harm. That's our first oath, and that we're only doing good. Mm-hmm. And of course, there are going to be outliers. Not to bring up this whole topic, but look at the legislators. It's not like there aren't corrupt legislators out there, but we're not going to generalize and say they're all corrupt.
Yeah, we need them. Yeah. We need legislators. They're going to be legislators no matter what.
Absolutely.
But are we going to punish all of them because some of them are bad apples?
No.
No.
It's helpful. We're going to trust that overall the system is working well.
Yeah.
And if we need to make some reforms along the way, then that's what we do.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what we're doing here is trying to update, to modernize some of our statutes, because many other states, 23 in fact for marriage and family therapy, have been doing this already, the associate level licensing. And as you just said, the federal government has Medicare, what is it, Center for Medicare and Medicaid?
Is CMS, so Department of Health and Human Services came out with that policy brief, with all that research to show the disparities. And then CMS, Medicare, Centers for Medicare, Medicaid Services, they have already determined to include audio only in the definitions of telecommunications exchange something, or anyways, it qualifies as telehealth. There's a couple conditions, but they made it permanent. They're saying telehealth via telephone is okay. We want to make sure you have like a in-person or a face-to-face visit once a year, and maybe some other things. Make sure you put some notes in your thing that like it's not necessary to have a face-to-face thing, and patient preference is perfectly fine. One of the proposals that's going through HB 1980, it does, that's another bill for you guys to watch, because that could be the vehicle that ends up being the one on telephone contacts as telehealth audio only. But that one is not preferred by our groups, because HB 1980 it allows health insurance plans to provide for audio only treatment, but it makes explicit that audio only telephone contacts is not considered telehealth. So they want to keep it completely separate. And they said you can do telephone, and this is for behavioral health. Right. This is the proposals I'm talking about is like a audio only for behavioral health, mental health, because we're asking for a carve out for this purpose because it's so unique. Right. But the HB 1980 says you can provide health insurance plans. You can provide for telephone health if you want, but you have to meet 3 conditions. One is that you have an in-person meeting at least once in the 12 months prior. It started out originally as 6 months, but they scaled it back to 12 months. Actually, that's what CMS says. Medicare is one of the things. The second thing is that it's actually a medically necessary service, and it's a covered service, which is a gimme. Everyone understands that, of course, right? You don't need
services we provide are medically necessary. That's
right. So I don't know why that's in there, but it's in there. And then the third qualification is that the telehealth option is unavailable. And so we've been raising questions like, what does unavailable mean? Does patient preference have any place in this? What if it's someone who's, immobile, or they have a social phobia, or they're living out of the country for a while, or a pandemic and you're not allowed. So there's all sorts of things that could make the tech unavailable. Maybe they're just like, they just want to talk on the phone. They
Right.
just like it that way.
When you put it that way, it sounds very administrative centric and not
Yeah,
very client or patient centered.
not clinical at all.
Definitely not. I don't know where the clinical judgment is in there at all. Yeah.
Yeah. It's well, to me, it just seems like that's going to cost a lot of money for someone to like make spreadsheets and collect data. And I don't know who pays for that. The plan members do, I guess. For why, I don't know, because I'm perfectly fine with my neighbors talking to their therapist on the phone for years on end. I don't care. So
Yeah.
yeah, arbitrary, I guess, is a way to describe it. So we support any effort to improve access, and this proposal purports to expand access by providing for telephonic therapies and coverage for it. But there is some language in this bill that the commissioner had picked up on in the first draft. And I guess it says that the insurance plan may provide coverage for telephonic service only if it has those three conditions that we just talked about. And so when you think about it, and what I'm hearing, and I don't know this for a fact, I don't really know the details of all the plans and what they offer. You guys probably have a better sense, but I've been hearing that some plans like Aloha Care and maybe even Kaiser, they actually do provide reimbursement for telephonic therapy. So if this bill with that language passes, the net effect, kind of scary, the net effect might undo all of these plans out there that do provide it, because now there's a statute that says you have to make sure there's an in-person visit every 12 months and the tech is unavailable. What is going to happen to your practice, John, if you have to meet every patient who likes to talk on the phone in person every year?
Yeah, well, it would shut it down because I'm solely
Well,
telehealth.
who needs you?
Yeah, or the
We
three
don't
other
demand
providers
it.
in my practice, right?
We don't need you to help supervise anybody either.
Oh my God. Right, right. So yeah, I really appreciate you bringing this bill up. This is HB
Yeah,
1980. I think it's very well intended, and it could
yeah.
actually have the equal and opposite effect of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, so that's the kind of thing that we need to make sure our legislators understand. It may very well have been or inadvertent drafting error, but the effect is the exact opposite of what the bill is intended to do. So it's kind of scary that we've been putting so much effort to like get these ideas and this access expanding, and there's this looming threat that's going to further restrict it, and I'm not sure why. I don't really understand why. Because these people are all saying they're about helping.
We're just going to have to leave that as a mystery for now. Maybe other people can answer that question in the chat later as they're watching this.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll come back to that question at another time. I want to respect your time, Becky. I know you've got a ton to do, and I'm so grateful for you joining us. And just to tell everybody out there, it's thanks to your membership in HIAMFT that we're able to have Becky Gardner on our team. She is just a dynamo, super bright, super on it, and just like I said, a really good person.
Aw.
Um, and we want to continue to support our efforts as MFTs in the legislative sessions in the future. So please, if you're not a member of HIAMFT, become a member. Part of your dues goes to supporting Becky being on our team, and also to HPA and NASW Hawaii, to Ray and Sonia over there. Mahalos to you for all the love that you've been giving to to Becky and to our association. It's been a wonderful mental health hui. Yeah. Happy Valentine's Day to you all.
Love you guys back. Every MFT I know is top shelf. So yeah, I'm happy to be working with you.
So on that note, enjoy the rest of your Valentine's Day, Becky.
Yes, you too.
Mahalo for joining. And to everybody out there, we will see you next Monday. Be sure to watch your emails for any correspondence from myself and from Becky, and we'll see you next Monday. All right.
Aloha.
Yeah, aloha.